You. Yeah, you. Come here for a sec. I just wanted to say, look at you. Seriously, look at you. Still breathing, still thinking, still walking around after everything they tried to do to your name. That's kinda wild, don't you think? You tilt your head, and there's this little smirk tugging at the corner of your mouth because deep down, you already know where this is going. See, I've been watching you for a while. Watching you deal with people who swore you were soft, harmless, easy to push around. People who treated your whole life like some cheap little joke. People who kept poking, laughing, whispering, scrolling past you like you were background noise. People who thought messing with you was just routine. Something they could do on their break. Something they could forget by lunch. But here's the funny part. The moment you actually stood up, the moment you stretched your spine 1 inch higher, their whole damn signal cut out. Static, glitches, panic in their eyes like, wait, that's not supposed to happen. Because you weren't supposed to rise, right? You weren't supposed to talk back. You weren't supposed to get confident or smart or disciplined. You weren't supposed to confront the very people who fed off your silence. But you did, and oh, that broke something in them. They had this image of you, this toy version they carried around in their head, this puppet who never fought back, this ghost who never took up space, this quiet little thing who stayed in the corner nodding, apologizing, shrinking. But then you stood. You stood like someone who finally remembered their damn worth. And that moment, that single shift, it knocked out their whole broadcast. You ever seen someone lose control of a situation so fast that their whole face turns into one big buffering wheel? That's what happened. 1 second they were the main character in your story, bossing you around, laughing, pointing, and the next second you stepped forward like, hi, I'm done with that. Their voices shook, their hands trembled, their confidence evaporated like sweat on asphalt. Because the minute you stopped being the joke, they became the ones exposed. They couldn't hide behind the noise anymore. They couldn't pretend you were weak. They couldn't pretend you didn't notice. They couldn't pretend they weren't obsessed with controlling you. They wanted you small. They needed you small. Your silence kept their whole little power grid running. And the instant you unplugged from their games, their circuit blew. Here's the thing nobody tells you. People who mock you, people who underestimate you, people who play with your heart, your name, your time, they don't actually think you're weak. Nah, that's the mask. They're scared you might wake up one day and actually see yourself. Because once you do, once you see who you really are, they can't handle you anymore. You ever notice how loud the room gets? Right when you start healing, right when you start moving different, right when you stop responding to nonsense. Suddenly everybody's voice rises because their control is dying. And the crazy part? The whole time they were laughing at you, they never expected you to survive what they put you through. But you did. Every rumor, every betrayal, every time they lied on your name, every moment they made you feel small, every time they celebrated your pain behind your back, you survived. And now you walk around with this energy, this quiet, loaded, dangerous calm that makes the same people who mocked you start checking over their shoulders. You know why? Because your glow is starting to expose their shadows. Your strength is exposing their intentions. Your growth is highlighting their immaturity. Your clarity is threatening their confusion. And your presence, your simple, unapologetic presence, is scrambling whatever signal they once used to feel superior to you. They tried to program you, tried to turn you into predictable code, tried to train you to shrink whenever they raised their voice, tried to keep you stuck in emotional poverty because they knew if you ever chose yourself, if you ever stood tall, if you ever became aware of your own power, they were done. You rising wasn't just inconvenient for them, it was catastrophic. People who built their ego on top of your silence can't function when you start talking. People who built their confidence on your insecurities freeze when they see you healing. People who felt powerful playing with you start malfunctioning the second you stop entertaining their games. Oh, and let's not pretend. They noticed the shift. They noticed the tone change. They noticed the way you stopped laughing at their dry jokes. They noticed the way your yeah became sharper, shorter, almost surgical. They noticed the way you began walking with a certain, I don't know, electricity? Like every step you take now has purpose. Like you're not wandering anymore. Like you actually know who you are. And that scares them. It scares them because they can't predict you now. It scares them because they can't manipulate you now. It scares them because you stopped offering explanations. It scares them because your energy is colder, clearer, wiser. It scares them because you carry yourself like someone who's done being played with. You're not the punchline anymore. You're the plot twist. You're not the background noise. You're the static that shuts the whole system down. You're not the easy target they once fed on. You're the shockwave that exposes the hunters. You rose. You stood. You disrupted the entire power dynamic. And the moment you did, their signal, the one they used to control you, mock you, humiliate you, belittle you, went silent. You know what people do when the lights go out. They panic, they scramble, they bump into the truth they were trying to avoid. That's what happened when you finally stood tall. Your existence became the outage that forced everyone to see who they really were in the dark, and it keeps shifting everything around you. Because once that darkness hit, you could practically feel the temperature in the room change. People who used to laugh with their whole chest suddenly got real quiet, real fast. People who thought you were just decoration started watching you like you were holding the blueprint to their downfall. It's hilarious, honestly. The same mouths that tossed your name around like scrap paper suddenly didn't know how to speak. Like their vocabulary just evaporated. And you're standing there, breathing steady, not even trying to flex, not even trying to prove anything, just existing with this new frequency in your chest. This calm, heavy, grounded energy that whispers, yeah, try me again. And every time you exhale, something in them glitches because they can't plug into you anymore. They can't use your insecurities as a charging port. They can't run their ego off your self-doubt. They can't treat you like emotional furniture. Just something in the room they bump into without thinking. You became untouchable in the most human way possible. Not icy, not arrogant, just aware. Aware of who you are, aware of what you survived, aware of how badly they miscalculated you. And that awareness, it hits harder than any revenge could. People don't malfunction because you get loud. People malfunction because you get clear. When you stop explaining your pain to people who caused it. When you stop negotiating your boundaries with people who violated them. When you stop giving your loyalty to people who never earned your vulnerability. When you stop letting your heart be a playground for anyone bored enough to step on it. That clarity disrupts their whole identity. They can't figure out who they are without you playing the role they assigned you. You weren't supposed to be strong. You weren't supposed to be bold. You weren't supposed to be this version of yourself. The version who looks in the mirror and doesn't flinch anymore. And the wild part is, you didn't even announce the shift. You didn't post some new chapter speech or make some dramatic exit. You just started choosing yourself in tiny, subtle ways. A shorter text, a colder tone, a quieter reaction, a delayed reply, a raised eyebrow, a casual, yeah, I'm not doing that. Small things, small adjustments, but those little shifts, they hit them like earthquakes. Because people who rely on your silence notice the sound of your confidence even when you whisper. And that's exactly when their signal cut out. Not when you screamed, not when you snapped, not when you fought back in some dramatic explosion. It was when you finally detached from the storyline they wrote for you, when you stopped performing the version of you that made them comfortable, when you stepped into the version of you that made you proud. And suddenly they're staring at you like, who the hell is this? And you're thinking, the person I was always supposed to be. They kept trying to reboot the old you, the passive one, the forgiving one, the shrinking one, the one that let things slide, the one that smiled through disrespect, the one they could drain without consequence. But the old software doesn't run anymore. You updated in silence. You rebuilt yourself in private. You upgraded your self-worth while they were busy underestimating you. And every time they try to engage with the old version of you, their whole emotional Wi-Fi crashes, buffering, frozen, error screen, signal lost, because they're finally realizing something that terrifies them. You outgrew the cage they designed around your potential. You're not playing character anymore. You're not waiting for validation. You're not handing out second chances like discount coupons. You're not filling emotional voids that aren't yours to fix. You're here, present, aware, and dangerous in a quiet, steady way. The kind of dangerous that comes from healing instead of hurting. The kind of dangerous that comes from choosing yourself without apology. The kind of dangerous that comes from recognizing exactly who mistook your kindness for weakness and exactly who's trembling now that you stopped letting them. And the best part, you don't even need to say anything. Your energy is doing the talking for you. Your presence is doing the heavy lifting. Your silence is doing the exposing. Your growth is doing the haunting. And it keeps shifting everything around you. Because every step you take from this point on hits different. Like you're walking with this quiet thunder under your skin. And the people who used to laugh at you, they feel it. They feel it in their chest, in their throat, in that little shaky breath they take whenever you enter a room. It's wild how fast the energy flips when you stop being the one who absorbs everything. You ever notice that? The moment you stopped carrying everyone's emotional garbage, the moment you stopped cleaning up messes that weren't yours, the moment you stopped trying to prove your worth to people who weren't even worth your time, that's when something in them short-circuited. Because, they depended on that old version of you. They depended on the version who'd apologize for things that weren't your fault. They depended on the version who'd smile through disrespect. They depended on the version who'd stay small just to make them feel bigger. They depended on you pretending you didn't notice the shade, the jokes, the manipulation. And when you finally stopped pretending, their entire personality lost the Wi-Fi connection it ran on. You ever watch someone's confidence evaporate in real time? It's like you can see their ego buffering. They try to replay the old script, talk to you the old way, treat you the old way, manipulate you the old way. But, nothing loads. Because you're not subscribing to their nonsense anymore. You're not giving them the access you used to give for free. You're not handing out emotional discounts anymore. You're not letting people walk in and rearrange your piece like it's some training ground for their issues. You became someone they can't predict, and unpredictable you. That's the version that terrifies them, because your silence used to mean surrender. Now it means calculation. Your distance used to mean confusion. Now it means clarity. Your okay used to mean you'd tolerate it. Now it means you're done entertaining it. And the funniest thing, they don't know what to do with the version of you who finally respects yourself. It's like watching someone try to control a machine they never built, never understood, never cared to maintain. They pushed buttons they thought would still work. They used tones they thought would still intimidate you. They tested boundaries they thought would still bend. Nothing responded. Because once you healed the parts of you they fed on, you became unreachable in all the spaces where they used to drain you. And that's the moment their signal died. That's the moment they realized they can't play with you anymore. They can't access the innocence they abused. They can't access the fear they exploited. They can't access the confusion they twisted into control. You're operating on a whole different frequency. A frequency built from scars that turned into strategy, from heartbreak that turned into awareness, from betrayal that turned into boundaries, from silence that turned into strength. And, what makes this shift even more wild is that you didn't become cold. You didn't become bitter. You didn't become cruel. You became awake. Wide awake. Awake to the games. Awake to the patterns. Awake to the people who only show up when it benefits them. Awake to who you really are beneath all the noise, the mockery, the manipulation. And when someone finally wakes up, when someone finally learns how to see clearly, feel clearly, choose clearly, they stop moving the way fools expect. You move different now. Your posture is different. Your eyes are different. Your reactions are different. Your boundaries are different. Even your carries weight now. Like you're evaluating whether someone deserves your energy or not. And every time you choose yourself, every time you walk away from chaos, every time you stay calm in situations that used to break you, you create another outage in the lives of the people who thought you'd remain controllable forever. Their signal cut out the moment you stood up. But it stays out every time you decide you're not going back to being the character they wrote for you. And this shift keeps deepening in ways they never planned for. Because the longer you stay in this upgraded version of yourself, the more you start to notice the shift in the atmosphere around you. People don't approach you the same anymore. They don't talk to you with that fake confidence anymore. They don't test you with the same recycled nonsense anymore. You can literally feel the hesitation in their steps. You can feel that tiny pause before they speak, that little tremor in their tone, that awkward smile they weren't rehearsing before. It's like they're meeting you for the first time, even though you've been standing in front of them your whole life. And that's what awakening really looks like. Not some dramatic speech, not some loud announcement. It's this subtle, powerful shift in your energy that makes everyone else suddenly check their posture. Because, you stopped moving like someone waiting for permission. You move like someone who creates it. There's this undeniable presence about you now. Like you've become your own foundation. Like you learned how to carry yourself without shaking. Like you finally realized you don't have to audition for rooms you were born to reshape. and it rattles people who only knew the older, softer, quieter version of you. They depended on that version. They memorized that version. They curated entire strategies around that version. But they never prepared for this one. This version of you who doesn't flinch when someone raises their voice. This version of you who doesn't shrink when someone throws shade. This version of you who doesn't hand your power over just because someone demands it. This version of you who listens with a straight face as someone tries to manipulate you using tactics you've already decoded. It's unsettling for them. It's liberating for you. Because, the truth is, they never thought you'd outgrow the version they were comfortable stepping on. They never thought you'd see through the games they perfected. They never thought you'd start questioning the patterns you were trained to tolerate. They never thought you'd learn to walk with your own spine instead of leaning on someone else's validation. And the moment you did, their whole identity wobbled. Their certainty cracked, their mask slipped, their confidence flickered, like watching someone try to hold onto a rope they thought was pulling you down, only to realize you're not attached to it anymore. And they're the ones dangling. You didn't retaliate. You didn't scream. You didn't expose them. You didn't create chaos. You just stopped cooperating with their version of you. And that quiet refusal, that subtle, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore energy, that's what broke them. That's what made their signal cut out. That's what fried their whole emotional circuitry. Because they relied on you staying predictable, staying soft, staying confused, staying compliant, staying wounded. But you're not moving like that anymore. You're moving with choice, with clarity, with restraint, with purpose, with this almost unnerving calm that says, I finally know what I bring to the table and I'm done eating crumbs. And the thing that messes them up the most is that you didn't rise because of them. You rose in spite of them. Your power didn't come from proving anything to anyone. It came from understanding yourself deeply, from sitting with your wounds instead of hiding them, from building a backbone out of every moment you felt discarded. You didn't get stronger for applause. You got stronger because you had no other choice but to evolve when they kept underestimating you. And, that evolution didn't just change how you see them. It changed how you see yourself. You started recognizing the way your presence affects the room. You started noticing how people speak differently when they know they can't push you. You started seeing the fear behind the fake confidence of those who once mocked you. You started seeing the truth behind the way they suddenly avoid eye contact. Their signal didn't just cut out. Their whole operating system is trying to update itself to handle this new, powerful, self-aware version of you. Hello to all the monsters who made it out of the fire and came back holding the ashes like a trophy. Yeah, you didn't just survive, you stood on business, and now they fucking pray they could forget what you became. But they can't. Oh no. Because once a demon sees daylight, no prayer, no sage, no church bell is loud enough to drown out your echo. Let me tell you something that'll twist your stomach. They wanted you broken. They rehearsed your collapse like it was theater. They manifested your downfall so hard, they started to hallucinate victory. Until you made your next move. Until you stood up on everything they tried to bury you under and made it your stage. And the moment you stood on business, reality cracked. Their illusions shattered like glass in a riot, and you became the nightmare they can't outrun. You didn't clap back with words. You moved, you executed, you upgraded in silence so loud it ruptured their egos. And now they pace their rooms at night, replaying your rise like a glitch in the Matrix. They're haunted by how wrong they were. They'd give anything to unsee what you became. Because here's the secret. They weren't ready for a version of you that didn't flinch. They weren't prepared for the silence you weaponized. You turned distance into destruction. No revenge post, no comeback quote. Just results. And the agonizing sound of their own envy chewing through them like rot. You didn't ask for forgiveness. You became the consequence. You stopped trying to prove yourself to people who couldn't even face themselves. And the moment you chose self-respect over validation, that was the kill shot. Not just to your past, but to their entire fucking worldview. And now, they don't miss you. They miss controlling you. They miss when you doubted yourself, when they could confuse you, when you needed their fake-ass approval. But now you're the glitch. Now you're the shadow. Now you're the fucking ghost in their algorithm. And they pray. Oh, they pray for amnesia. Because your success is like a splinter in their soul. Every step forward you take is another reminder of what they'll never be able to undo. And that's the cost of standing on business. You don't get closure. You don't get applause. You get remembered as the one they never should have played with. You triggered their shame. You forced them to see what they were too cowardly to fix. You stopped explaining your worth, and they started losing their minds, trying to redefine you into something that fits their lie. But it's too late. You outgrew the lie. You outgrew the whole damn narrative. See, standing on business, it's not some trendy little clapback. It's not a meme. It's not a fucking soundbite you throw on a reel. It's surgical. It's warfare. It's a funeral march in reverse. Because when you stood on business, you resurrected yourself from the version of you that I designed to fail. They wanted you small. They wanted you confused. They built an entire fantasy around your collapse. And now they can't stop reliving the moment it backfired. You see, when you were quiet, they thought you were weak. When you were humble, they mistook it for fear. When you were patient, they thought you had no options until you flipped the whole fucking game board over and built a castle from the broken pieces. Now they watch in horror as your name becomes a trigger. Your presence is a test of their ego. You're not just a person anymore. You're a symbol they can't shake. You became a walking reminder of everything they tried to destroy but failed to kill. And that's what drives them insane. Because you didn't just move on, you evolved, you fucking ascended, you made peace with the shadows, and now you walk through the world like a damn ghost with receipts. Let me be real with you. These people, they didn't hate you. They hated your potential. They hated that you could be powerful without them. They hated that you knew too much, felt too deeply, rose too fast, stayed too focused, healed too hard, and didn't come back begging. They hate the fact that you learned to suffer in silence and still came back sharper than ever. Because they can't process how someone they counted out became someone they can't stop thinking about. Your wins aren't just wins. They're reminders that they bet on your failure and lost the fucking house. Now their peace is gone. Their self-image crumbling, their pride rotting, their stories don't even line up anymore. So what do? They pray for amnesia. They wish they could erase you like you were a typo in their little hero story. They want their memories redacted, their regrets deleted, their conscience silenced. Because knowing what you've become, that shit hurts. Worse than heartbreak, worse than failure, is the kind of pain you feel in your bones every time you see that person winning without you. Not angry, not bitter, just better. And that's what scares them the most. You got better, you upgraded, you learned how to walk alone, and never fucking flinched again. So yeah, they talk shit now, they downplay it, they throw shade behind passwords and private stories. But the truth is, your name lives rent-free inside their insecurities. Every glow-up photo you post, every win you don't announce, every move you make in silence is a psychological landmine for them. Because deep down, they know you became unreachable, and people hate what they can't control. They'd rather call you fake, arrogant, toxic, cold, than admit they lost access to the realest one they ever knew. So they pray, not for your return, not for forgiveness, not even for revenge. They just pray for forgetting, because your existence exposes everything they still haven't faced. They never expected you to survive. Let's just start there. They never planned for your resurrection. They thought their betrayal would finish you. They thought the lies, the silence, the smear campaigns, the fake apologies, the performative love would rot you out from the inside. They thought you'd self-destruct, that you'd fold quietly in the background like a rejected script. But you didn't fold. You rewrote the whole fucking plot. And now look at you. A goddamn problem. A beautiful, dangerous, untraceable problem. The type of story they can't erase. The type of soul that unsettles the weak. The type of truth that makes liars sweat in their sleep. Let me tell you something. When you stood on business, you didn't just level up. You triggered every unhealed wound inside of them. You exposed how shallow their confidence really was. You revealed how fake their support always had been. You proved that everything they thought they destroyed in you was just dormant, not dead, waiting. And when it woke up, when you woke up, you became the exact thing they never wanted to see. A version of yourself that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't need validation, and damn sure doesn't ask for closure. Now every time you breathe, they question who the fuck they even are. Every time you thrive, it feels like a personal insult to the mask they wear in public. That's why they pray for amnesia. Because watching you rise, it feels like karmic surgery without anesthesia. You remind them of the moment they chose ego over empathy. You remind them of the power they threw away and the authenticity they'll never get back. They'll post shit like, protect your peace, and real vibes only, while secretly spiraling over your glow-up. They'll quote healing, but they're still poisoned. They'll talk about letting go, but they study your every move like a religious text. You became a contradiction they can't make peace with, because the more you win, the less sense their betrayal makes. You weren't crazy, you weren't unstable, you weren't too much. You were just too real for a world that profits off of pretending. So now they rewrite history, they tell stories where they were the victim, they twist timelines, they Photoshop the past to make themselves look like the wounded ones. But truth doesn't rot. Truth doesn't age. Truth haunts, especially when it wears your face. And here's the worst part for them. You didn't even come back for revenge. You didn't stoop. You didn't retaliate. You just existed louder. You just healed harder. You just smiled sharper. And that was the final fucking blow. Because anyone can throw shade, but not everyone can evolve into something unforgettable. So yeah, they pray for amnesia, because you didn't just stand on business. You stood on their lies, their projections, their insecurities, and turned them all into fuel. Now your name tastes like regret in their mouths, and they wake up in cold sweats, haunted by a truth they buried. You were never the villain. You were the mirror. And they shattered it, trying to run from their reflection. You didn't just evolve. You detonated. And the blast radius, still expanding. They thought they were watching a breakdown. But what they witnessed was ego death. Yours? No. Theirs. Because when you stood on business, you didn't just come back different. You came back divine. And nothing scares small minds like someone who doesn't need a crown to rule. Let me say it again. You didn't ask for power. You became power. You didn't steal the spotlight. You became the goddamn sun. And now every time they blink, they see the afterimage of what they can never be again. That's why they spiral. That's why they lie. That's why they pray for amnesia, because they know the truth. And truth has a body count. See, when you stood on business, you didn't just cause discomfort. You collapsed their illusion. You murdered the version of you that tolerated disrespect. You buried the identity they manipulated. You cremated your weakness and scattered the ashes in their fake-ass group chats. You left no breadcrumb trail for their guilt to follow. You erased the bridge and lit the map on fire. And the version of you that emerged wasn't interested in redemption, wasn't playing PR, wasn't seeking peace. You became apocalyptic, not loud, not messy, not violent, just inevitable. You became the version of yourself that haunts cowards and turns manipulators into philosophers. Because now they ask themselves questions at 3 a.m. They pace the room, trying to understand how they lost someone who carried them through their own storms. Now they panic scroll. Now they second guess. Now they compare themselves to the very person they used to belittle. And you know what the sickest part is? They still won't admit they were wrong. Because admitting you were right means confronting the abyss they've avoided their whole lives. So instead, they pray. They pray for a reset. They pray for divine erasure. They pray for some cosmic control plus alt plus delete to cleanse the hard drive of their mind. Because you've taken root in the code. You infected their story with truth. You overwrote their delusion. You corrupted their ego's operating system. And now, every victory you live is a glitch they can't patch. That's what legacy looks like, isn't it? Not fame, not followers, but psychological warfare on those who thought they buried you. You became a legend, not because of the spotlight, but because of the scars you outgrew, the chains you shattered, and the mirror you forced them to look into. And now, they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to forget the one person who never needed them to begin with. You didn't just stand on business. You made it a memorial site. And every time they think about you, they light a candle in grief for the power they gave up when they bet against the wrong one. You know what happens when a storm survives its own destruction? It stops being weather and becomes climate. And that's you now, not just a bad memory, not just a mistake they try to suppress. You're atmospheric, you're systemic, you're a pressure system of truth and consequence that sits over their lives and never fucking moves. They can change cities, delete apps, block you, mute you, fake, healed. They can try every coping mechanism their ego throws at the wall, but none of it works, because you weren't just a chapter, you were the whole damn genre shift. You bent their arc into something they can't stand to reread, and now they pray. They pray like sinners caught in the rewind, begging for the mercy of forgetting. But forgetting doesn't save you when your failure becomes someone else's origin story. And that's exactly what you became, an origin story. Their sabotage gave birth to your ascension. Their hate sculpted your clarity. Their jealousy carved your focus. Their absence became the silence you trained in. And now, you're not just successful, you're mythical. They tell people you're different now, but the truth is, you always were. They just never had the depth to see it. And now that you walk like a curse and speak like a prophecy, they label you dangerous. Because you don't bend, you don't chase, you don't explain. You just win. Without theatrics, without begging, without permission, you move through shadows like you own the dark. And in a world addicted to attention, your silence hits harder than any speech ever could. Because now, you don't post for applause, you don't argue to prove your worth, you don't fight for seats at their corroded tables, you build altars from the rubble they left you in. You eat alone, thrive alone, and succeed so ruthlessly that they whisper your name like it's forbidden. And here's the brutal truth, the thing they choke on in private. You are what they feared you'd become if you ever realized they were never that important. The moment you looked at their betrayal and didn't break, didn't cry, didn't chase, but smiled. That was your ascension. You walked away like nothing happened. But everything happened. A galaxy was born in you. A threat they can't comprehend. A calm, calculating fire that doesn't need to scream to burn. Now they see your face in places you've never been. They hear your voice in the doubt that eats their ambition. They feel your shadow when the silence gets too loud. You're not a person to them anymore. You're a threshold, a line they know they crossed, and a life they'll never be invited back into. That's why they pray for amnesia, not because they miss you, but because they can't live with the memory of who they could have known, who they could have stood beside, who they could have built with. If only they hadn't fumbled someone sent by fate. And now, you are proof that God does not forgive stupidity quickly. You're not just out of reach now, you're off the map. You're post-human to them, a ghost with blood on its hands. But not from revenge, from resurrection. You moved so far beyond their comprehension, they have to lie to survive the thought of you. You see, most people try to leave behind pain, but you carried it. You wore it like armor. You savored it like venom you learned how to metabolize. You didn't run from the dark. You made it your forking address. You looked every betrayal in the eye, shook its hand, and said, "Thanks, I'll use this." You walked into the abyss and built a throne there. And when you came back, they didn't recognize you because they were looking for the version of you they once controlled, the soft target, the loyal fool, the one who explained, apologized, tolerated. But you came back feral. You came back with eyes that saw through masks and a silence that rattled foundations. And now, no matter how far they run, they feel you. In the quiet, in the guilt, in the moments when they finally realized they traded real for comfortable. They traded a once-in-a-lifetime soul for a dopamine slot machine of cheap attention. But here's the fucked up part. They didn't just lose you. They lost access to the dimension you now exist in. You don't speak their language anymore. Your thoughts are quantum, your moves, silent warfare, your peace, loaded like a weapon. You're not elevated, you're ascended. You operate in frequencies that burn their skin on contact. You no longer react, you restructure. You no longer warn, you shift gravity. And when they try to talk about you, they stutter, they oversimplify. Because how do you explain that someone you played with became the blueprint your soul now imitates in shame? So they pray, not for another chance, not for your return. They pray that the memory fades, because it's eating them alive. The way you held the line, the way you didn't fold, the way you watched them walk away and didn't chase. That moment, that single moment of refusal, it rewrote the trajectory of their fucking life. And they don't even know why they feel hollow now. They just do. Because you were the final real one, and they fumbled that like it meant nothing. And now everything they chase feels like a knockoff version of what you gave effortlessly. They seek replacements, but none of them carry that surgical truth. None of them hold the mirror up the way you did. None of them were forged in the same hell you survived and redecorated. You didn't just walk away. You unplugged from the simulation and rewrote your code. You transcended attachment. You outgrew visibility. You became the thing they mock publicly, but cry about privately. And that's the cruelest justice there is. They underestimated you so hard. They activated a version of you they'll spend the rest of their life trying to unsee. But you're not unseeable. You're inked into their story. You're the footnote on every new relationship, the measuring stick for every connection, the standard they'll never admit you set. And so they pray. They pray to forget the moment they laughed at your silence. They pray to forget the way you stopped explaining. They pray to forget how you stood on business and never looked back. This is the part they don't talk about, the part they pretend doesn't exist, the part where you didn't just stand on business. You became something holy and horrifying, because when you came back from the fire, you weren't human anymore. You were message, you were proof, you were retribution sewn into flesh, a walking prophecy in scars and silence, and they know it. That's why they whisper. That's why they try to erase your name from their mouth, like it carries plague. Because it does. You're not just a person to them now. You're punishment. You're the echo of a lesson they refused to learn when it was gentle. Now you live in a dimension above apology, above closure, above understanding. You live in their karma. You see, every time they laugh with new people, you flicker in the back of their mind like a virus. Every time they pretend to be healed, your absence pulses in their bloodstream like a fever. Every time they say, "I'm good now," they flinch, because they know damn well they never recovered from you. You didn't just stand on business. You ascended into symbolism. Now you exist where pain meets memory, where truth becomes scripture, where the ones who doubted you light candles in secret hoping to forget what it felt like to watch you rise while they rotted in place. You became a myth, a whispered warning, a lesson passed down in silence to anyone who thinks they can fumble someone like you and walk away clean. They don't tell the full story. They can't. Because telling the truth means confessing their cowardice. It means owning the fact that they prayed for your downfall and got your wings instead. That's why they don't hate you. They fear you.